I'm Ava Mitchell, 29, a luxury car designer who built an empire from the same rejection that broke me. My parents didn't show up to my wedding, said they were busy. Funny how their schedules cleared when they saw me pull up in a $135,000 Porsche with my name on the title. You ever realize success doesn't heal old wounds? It just makes the people who caused them suddenly remember your worth. Growing up, I was invisible in my own home. Straight-A report cards, ignored, art competitions, forgotten. My parents only cared about my brother, the future lawyer. I was just creative. Translation, a disappointment with glitter. So I learned early, attention isn't given, it's earned. Painfully, they say family is everything until yours forgets you exist. Imagine planning your wedding, the biggest day of your life, and realizing the people who were supposed to love you most didn't even bother to show up. No tears, no phone call, just silence, the kind that doesn't echo, it cuts. You tell yourself it doesn't matter, but it does. It always does, because deep down, you wanted them there. You wanted to look out into the crowd and see your parents smiling, proud that you made it, proud that you found love. Instead, you saw empty seats and a lifetime of being ignored condensed into one moment that burned its way into your chest. It's funny how pain changes you. It's not dramatic like the movies. It's slow, quiet, almost surgical. It makes you sharper, colder, more determined. You stop crying for attention and start building reasons for people to notice. That's how resentment turns into fuel, because when you're constantly underestimated, you start doing things no one thought you could. You start working harder, thinking faster, pushing limits they never believed you had. And that's when the shift happens. You stop wanting their approval and start wanting your own respect. You ever realize that being ignored is one of the most powerful motivators on earth? It's brutal but honest. People don't change because of comfort, they change because of pain. And being invisible in your own family, that's a special kind of pain. The kind that makes you grind your teeth at night and whisper to yourself, one day they'll see. You promise yourself that you'll be impossible to forget. You'll become the thing they talk about when they think no one's listening. That's the thing about family, they'll dismiss your dreams until those dreams start making noise. They'll laugh when you fail and stay silent when you rise. But the silence hits different when you're winning. It becomes uncomfortable for them, like every achievement is a reminder of how wrong they were. You don't even have to say anything. Your success does the talking. Your results become the revenge they can't deny. It's not about money at first. It's about proving that you can become everything they said you couldn't. It's about taking every ignored birthday, every brushed-off accomplishment, every sarcastic comment, and turning it into momentum. You start working late, not because you have to, but because you're possessed by something bigger. You start to crave the moment when you walk into a room and everyone who doubted you has no choice but to shut up. Not because you yelled, not because you begged, but because you became undeniable. And it always starts the same way, with that one painful event that flips a switch in your mind. Maybe it's a wedding they didn't attend. Maybe it's a promotion they didn't care about. Maybe it's realizing you could disappear for a year and no one would even notice. That's when the bitterness stops being poison and starts being power. You learn to build in silence. You learn to let success be your confrontation. You stop explaining yourself to people who only listen when it benefits them. The day you finally start winning, it doesn't even feel like revenge. It feels like release, like you've been holding your breath for years and finally exhaled. The people who ignored you, suddenly they remember your number. Suddenly you're doing so well. Suddenly they always believed in you. But you know better. Their interest isn't love, it's curiosity. They want to know how you did it, how you survived without their validation. And you smile because you know the answer is something they'll never understand. You became stronger because of their absence, not in spite of it. That's the harsh truth people avoid. Not everyone deserves access to your success story. Not everyone who knew your pain gets to enjoy your triumph. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't forgiveness or reconciliation. It's distance. It's showing up one day with everything they said you'd never have and watching the shock ripple through their faces. The same faces that once looked at you like you were nothing now try to hide their regret. That's when you realize you never needed an apology, you just needed to outgrow them. You don't need to yell, you don't need to explain. Just keep driving. Keep moving forward while they stand there, frozen in the past they built for you. Because the truth is, nothing stings more than being forgotten by the person you once dismissed. The silence they gave you, Give it back, amplified. Let your success speak in a language they can't ignore. Because one day, the same people who acted like you didn't exist will see your name, your work, your life. And they'll wish they hadn't looked away when you needed them most. That's when you'll understand. Sometimes being ignored isn't the curse you thought it was. Sometimes it's the beginning of becoming unforgettable. When the invitations went out, I knew not everyone would come, but I never imagined they wouldn't. It wasn't even a conversation, just a text that came in 2 days later. We won't be able to make it. Your father's got his golf tournament that weekend. That was it. No, we're proud of you. No, we wish we could be there. Just another transaction in a lifetime of emotional bankruptcy. I stared at that message for hours, not because it surprised me, but because it confirmed what I already knew. I'd been waiting for people to care who never would. The night before the wedding, I kept checking my phone, half expecting it to light up with an apology. It didn't. Instead, I sat in the quiet of my hotel room, surrounded by flowers and dresses and laughter that wasn't mine. My friends told me to forget about it, to enjoy the day, to focus on love. But they didn't know what it's like to walk into the biggest moment of your life carrying the weight of being unwanted. It's a different kind of ache, the kind that hums under your skin while you smile for pictures. When the ceremony started, I held it together. The music played, the guests stood, and for a moment I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd see them at the end of the aisle. But the seats reserved for them stayed empty. Perfectly polished, perfectly untouched, just like the relationship we had. I walked past those empty chairs like they were ghosts of the childhood I tried to fix. I told myself I didn't need them. But I felt the absence like a knife, slicing through every smile I forced that day. It's strange how grief doesn't always come from death. Sometimes it comes from the living, people who are right there, breathing, but choose to treat you like a stranger. You try to bury the disappointment, pretend you're fine, but it follows you into every corner of the celebration. The music feels too loud, the laughter feels fake, and the congratulations blur into white noise. You're supposed to be happy, but happiness feels impossible when the people who made you don't even show up to see who you've become. Later that night, when the crowd thinned and the lights dimmed, I slipped away. Everyone was drunk on love and champagne, but I was drunk on realization. That was the moment it hit me. I'd been begging for scraps from people who were never planning to feed me. My whole life, I tried to earn what should have been unconditional. Their love was a prize I could never win, and the game was rigged from the start. That kind of truth doesn't just hurt, it rearranges you. So I made a quiet promise to myself that night: no more chasing, no more performing, no more waiting for them to decide I was enough. They could keep their approval, their guilt, their empty apologies. I'd build a life so solid they'd have to watch it from a distance. Because sometimes you don't get closure. You just get clarity, and clarity is a dangerous thing. It burns down every illusion you've been hiding behind. The next morning, I looked at the photos. Everyone smiling, everyone celebrating. And there I was, radiant, but hollow behind the eyes. Not because I wasn't happy about the love I'd found, but because I finally accepted the love I'd never get. The wedding wasn't just the start of a marriage. It was the end of a chapter I'd been too afraid to close. A chapter where I kept hoping my parents would one day turn the page and read my worth. But they didn't, and maybe that's the point. Some people will never see your value until the world forces them to. They'll ignore your milestones, dismiss your dreams, and act like your success is luck. But there comes a moment, one you can feel building deep in your bones, when life gives you the chance to show them exactly who they overlooked. That's what I held on to. That quiet, dangerous promise that one day they'd see everything they walked away from. So when they skipped my wedding, it stopped being about what I'd lost. It became about what I was about to gain: a fire, a drive, a clarity that could only come from being truly alone. And in that silence, surrounded by the faint echo of "I can't make it," I found the most powerful words I'd ever think. Watch me. The night after the wedding, when the music was gone and the last glass had been cleared, I sat on the hotel balcony staring at the city lights. Everyone else had gone to bed, but I couldn't. The silence was too loud. Every thought that I'd been trying to bury clawed its way back up, all the years of trying to earn something that should have been given freely. Love, respect, recognition. I realized in that moment how exhausting it was to live your entire life auditioning for approval that was never coming. That's when something in me broke, but not in the way people think. It wasn't a collapse, it was a crack that let something dangerous in. Resolve. There's a point where heartbreak turns into hunger. The kind that doesn't crave affection but power. You stop asking, why don't they love me? And start asking, how can I make sure I never need them again? That shift is quiet, but it's violent. It flips your whole world. I remember sitting there, my wedding dress still hanging over the chair, thinking, this is the last night I will ever be small for anyone. I was done playing invisible. Done waiting to be chosen. Done softening myself so they could stay comfortable in their version of who I was supposed to be. The next morning, I woke up different. No tears, no bitterness, just cold focus. I went back home, packed away the disappointment, and started building something they could never ignore. At first, it was small, late nights sketching designs, scribbling notes, teaching myself skills I couldn't afford to study. Every idea came from a place of defiance. I didn't just want to succeed, I wanted to become undeniable. The kind of success that forces silence in a room. The kind that makes even your critics whisper your name. While they were bragging about my brother's new job, I was in my garage, working with grease-stained hands and a heart that burned hotter than any engine I touched. I didn't care about glamour, not yet. I cared about mastery, about becoming so good they couldn't pretend not to notice. It wasn't easy. There were nights when I doubted myself, nights when the old pain whispered, "You'll never be enough." But pain is funny like that. If you stop running from it, it becomes fuel. I started to feed off it. Every time I felt that sting of rejection, I used it to push harder, think sharper, move faster. People underestimate what neglect does to a person. It doesn't always break you. Sometimes it builds something unbreakable inside you. When you've spent years being unseen, you develop this hunger to make an impact, to leave a mark so deep that even the ones who turn their backs have to stop and look. That's what I was becoming, a storm built out of silence. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I didn't post it online, didn't brag, didn't ask for advice. I disappeared. Because real transformation doesn't happen when you're trying to prove it, it happens when no one's watching. And in that darkness, I found something I'd never had before: control. For the first time, my life wasn't about chasing anyone's approval. It was about earning my own respect. That was the moment I knew I wasn't healing, I was evolving. The more I built, the less I thought about them. Their absence stopped feeling like a wound and started feeling like space I could finally fill with purpose. I worked until my body ached, until my mind was buzzing with ideas that kept me up at night. I was obsessed, but not with revenge, with creation. Every design, every line I drew was a rebellion. A quiet middle finger to every time they told me I was wasting my time. Looking back, that was the turning point. The night they didn't show up to my wedding wasn't my breaking point, it was my ignition. Because sometimes it takes being abandoned by the people you love most to finally realize you don't need saving. You need direction. You need to stop begging for someone to believe in you and start betting on yourself. That's where power begins, in that sharp, painful moment when you stop waiting to be chosen and decide to choose yourself. And once you do, once that fire catches, there's no going back. The years that followed were a blur of sweat, silence, and stubbornness. I worked like someone possessed. While the rest of the world slept, I was sketching, building, testing, failing, and starting again. I stopped counting the nights I stayed up until sunrise, hands trembling from caffeine and exhaustion. There were no guarantees, no shortcuts, no safety nets, just pure, relentless effort. Every screw I tightened, every design I drafted, every late-night brainstorm was a brick in the empire I was quietly constructing. And the best part? Nobody saw it coming. That garage, the one that smelled like oil and metal, became my sanctuary. My rebellion. I didn't need applause, I needed momentum. I didn't need someone to tell me I was doing great, I needed proof that I could. So I built it piece by piece. People think success is this glamorous, cinematic thing. It's not. It's isolation, self-doubt, and a sick kind of obsession that keeps you alive when logic says you should quit. It's doing the same thing 1,000 times until you finally get it right. It's bleeding for something that no one else believes in but you. And one day, it started to work. The first car I ever designed got noticed, not by family, not by friends, but by strangers. A small blog picked it up, then a magazine, then a client. And before I could even process it, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. It was surreal, but not lucky. People called it a breakthrough, but it was. It was years of invisible labor finally breaking the surface. The same silence that once hurt me had now become my weapon. I wasn't ignored anymore. I was impossible to ignore. Money started coming in, sure, but it wasn't about that. It was about watching the world finally see what I'd always known I was capable of. Every time someone admired my work, I felt a strange mix of pride and peace, not because I wanted validation, but because I had outgrown the need for it. The girl who once begged for attention was gone. In her place stood someone sharper, louder, unstoppable. Still, success doesn't erase the past, it just reframes it. I'd scroll through old photos sometimes, see my parents smiling next to my brother at his law school graduation, and feel nothing. No jealousy, no anger, just distance. Like they belonged to a story I'd already outgrown. Their silence no longer hurt, it just confirmed how small their world really was. I had built something they couldn't understand, something they would have dismissed if I'd told them. Then came the headline: "The Woman Redefining Power on Wheels." It was surreal seeing my name printed in bold like that, the same name they once laughed at when I said I wanted to design cars. I didn't need to call them, I knew they saw it. People talk. Relatives brag, neighbors whisper. I imagine my mother clipping the article, pretending she'd always believed in me. My father skimming it, pretending not to care but reading every word. And the thought didn't make me bitter, it made me calm. Because for the first time, I didn't need to prove anything. They could keep their opinions, I had results. That's the secret they don't tell you: revenge doesn't always look like anger. Sometimes it looks like peace. The kind of peace that comes when your success is so undeniable that silence becomes their only response. You don't need to confront them, your life does it for you. Every achievement is a reminder of what they missed. Every headline, every paycheck, every client is another echo of their absence, louder than any argument you could ever have. I started to realize that I didn't rise despite asterisk being ignored. I rose because of it. The pain they gave me became the blueprint for everything I built. Their indifference was the best thing that ever happened to me, because when nobody believes in you, you learn to believe in yourself with a kind of ferocity that can't be faked. You stop chasing people and start chasing purpose. And purpose, once it grabs you, doesn't let go. By the time success came knocking, I didn't need anyone to validate it. The version of me that once longed for a text, a call, a proud smile, she was gone. In her place was someone who understood that love without respect is worthless, and respect without effort is meaningless. I had finally earned both from myself. And the irony: the same silence that once broke me had now become the sound of power. It happened 3 years later. A quiet, bright afternoon that felt ordinary until it was. I was driving through my old neighborhood, the streets still cracked and uneven, the houses smaller than I remembered. Everything looked the same, but I was. The garage I once escaped from now seemed like a cage I had broken open with my own hands. And sitting behind the wheel of a machine I designed myself. A custom Porsche 911 Turbo S, $135,000 of precision and defiance, I realized I wasn't just visiting the past. I was confronting it. The closer I got to my parents' house, the slower I drove. Not because I was nervous, but because I wanted to feel it, that shift in power. For years, I'd been the one walking on eggshells, afraid of saying too much, wanting to prove I was enough. But now, I didn't need to prove anything. My success wasn't a performance, it was a fact. I pulled into their driveway, the car's engine purring like it knew exactly what kind of moment this was. My father stepped outside first, wearing that same expression he always had: bored, slightly judgmental, the look of someone who thought he'd already seen the world. But that look didn't last. His eyes landed on the car, then on me, and something flickered. Recognition. Shock. Maybe even pride, though he'd never admit it. My mother followed, her voice breaking into that sugary tone she reserved for people she wanted something from. "Oh my God, look at you," she said, her hands fluttering like she was greeting a celebrity. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I just felt distance, like we were strangers standing in the shadow of everything they had ignored. It's wild how money and success can make people remember your name. Suddenly, the same daughter who was too emotional, too stubborn, too unrealistic had become so talented, so hardworking, so inspiring. They asked questions: how I'd been, what I was working on, if I still talked to certain people. I gave short, polite answers. Nothing sharp, nothing cruel, just enough to keep the air cold. I didn't come there for revenge, I came there for closure. And standing there, seeing them scramble to rewrite the story in their heads, I realized I'd already won. Because that's the thing about power: you don't need to announce it, you just have to live it. The Porsche wasn't just a car, it was a message written in steel and speed. You should have believed me when I had nothing. Every polished surface, every careful detail screamed the truth they never wanted to face. I became everything you said I couldn't without needing you at all. My mother walked around the car, running her hand along the door like she was touching a miracle. "This is yours?" she asked, as if she couldn't quite believe it. I nodded. She laughed softly. "We always knew you'd do something amazing." I smiled because there's no point arguing with revisionist history. Let them think what they want. The truth doesn't need witnesses, it just needs results. They invited me inside, offered coffee, asked if I could stay longer. I declined, not out of spite, but because I had places to be, lives to live, dreams that didn't need their permission anymore. I wasn't there to mend anything. Some things aren't meant to be fixed, they're meant to be outgrown. As I walked back to the car, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window, calm, composed, unrecognizable from the girl who once begged for their love. I got in, started the engine, and watched them through the rearview mirror as I backed out of the driveway. My dad stood there, his hand on my mom's shoulder, both of them staring like they'd just seen a ghost. And maybe they had, because the version of me they buried under years of indifference had come back, alive and unbothered, wrapped in horsepower and silence. As the tires hit the street, I pressed the accelerator, and the sound tore through the quiet suburb like thunder. It wasn't just noise, it was a statement. For every time they'd ignored me, dismissed me, made me feel invisible, this was my answer. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their approval. I had built my own name, my own life, my own noise. And in that moment, with the engine roaring and the wind slicing through my hair, I finally understood. Sometimes the loudest, "I told you so," doesn't come from your mouth, it comes from your drive. The drive home felt different, not triumphant, not vengeful, just clear. For the first time, I saw my life without the filter of needing to prove anything. I didn't feel lighter because I'd shown them my success. I felt lighter because I finally understood I didn't need their reaction to validate it. The silence that used to haunt me now felt like peace, like freedom. Because once you stop begging for someone's acknowledgement, you start to realize how powerful you've become without it. There's this ugly truth most people never want to face. Family doesn't always mean love. Sometimes, it just means shared DNA and years of learned disappointment. We grow up thinking parents are supposed to be your safety net, the people who catch you when the world gets cruel. But what happens when they're the ones who let you fall again and again, just to see if you'll break? What happens when "I'm proud of you" only shows up after the world starts clapping? That's not love. That's convenience disguised as affection. You learn the difference the hard way. You learn it every time they ignore your wins, minimize your effort, and only show up when there's something to take credit for. It's brutal, but it's necessary. Because that's how you stop confusing validation with connection. You stop mistaking attention for affection. You stop waiting for an apology that will never come. You start to see that people's absence is sometimes their most honest gift. It shows you exactly where you don't belong. That's the real awakening, when you realize that their approval would have changed nothing. Even if they had shown up to the wedding, said all the right words, smiled for all the pictures, it wouldn't have fixed the emptiness. Because the problem was never just one missed event, it was every small moment before it. Every time they laughed when you tried to dream, every sigh when you spoke up, every subtle reminder that their love came with conditions. That's not love, that's control dressed up as care. So when they finally reached out, suddenly warm and proud, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt detached, because I knew what it was, curiosity, not connection. They weren't interested in asterisk me, they were interested in the version of me that succeeded. The one that made them look good. And that's the trap most people fall into, thinking success will finally make people love you right. It won't. It'll just expose who is only watching to see if you'd make it. The truth is, success doesn't heal abandonment. It just amplifies the silence. You can have the house, the car, the career, the life, and still feel the ache of being unseen. But here's the shift. That ache no longer defines you. It becomes background noise, a reminder, not a wound. You start to understand that you didn't succeed to prove them wrong. You succeeded because you finally stopped letting their version of you dictate your future. And here's another hard truth: forgiveness isn't always noble. Sometimes it's unnecessary. You don't owe closure to people who never offered you care. You don't have to make peace with your pain by inviting them back into your life. That's not healing, that's self-betrayal. Healing is recognizing that some people don't deserve front-row seats to your evolution. Healing is keeping your distance, not out of spite, but out of respect for your own peace. I used to think success was about proving my worth. Now I know it's about protecting it. It's about saying, you don't get access to me anymore, without guilt. It's about letting them live with their version of the story while you move on with the truth. Because the real revenge isn't being loved by them, it's being completely unaffected by whether they love you or not. That's what I felt that day, driving away. Not revenge, not satisfaction, just this quiet power humming under my skin, the power of knowing I didn't need to be chosen because I had already chosen myself. And once you reach that point, where peace replaces permission, there's no going back. You stop chasing love that costs you your self-worth. You stop explaining your success to people who once doubted you. You stop living to prove and start living to be. As the city lights blurred past, I could feel the weight of everything I'd carried for years start to lift. The guilt, the need to be understood, the endless rehearsals of what I'd say if they ever apologized. None of it mattered anymore. The road ahead was wide open, and for the first time, I wasn't running from the past, I was outrunning it. The hum of the engine wasn't just noise, it was liberation. Every mile I drove felt like a statement, like a piece of my old life peeling off and dissolving in the wind. I didn't need their love or their presence or their approval. I had something better, clarity. Clarity that I'd spent too long trying to be small enough for people who never intended to see me fully. Clarity that not every story needs reconciliation. Some stories just need an ending. And this was mine. I could have gone back for one more conversation. I could have sat across from them, asked them why. Why the silence? Why the distance? Why the years of pretending I didn't matter? But what would that change? You can't force honesty out of people who have built their entire identity around denial. You can't make people see you when they've chosen blindness as comfort. So instead, I gave them something they'd understand, results. I let my success do what my words never could. I let it echo. At the red light, I caught my reflection again in the side mirror. Calm, grounded, unapologetic. The version of me they tried to dim was gone, replaced by someone they'd have to meet through headlines and whispers. And that, I realized, was justice. Not the kind that screams, but the kind that lives well, thrives loud, and moves forward without looking back. As the light turned green, I pressed the accelerator just a little harder. The Porsche surged forward, the engine roaring like defiance made tangible. That sound, that rush, was everything I'd been chasing. Not revenge, not recognition, just freedom. Freedom from needing anyone to tell me I made it. Freedom from waiting for the applause that was never coming. Because here's the thing no one tells you. The sweetest revenge isn't proving them wrong, it's outgrowing the version of yourself that needed them to be wrong. It's realizing that their absence built the space where your power now lives. It's understanding that the closure you've been craving isn't something they can give. It's something you create, the moment you stop turning around. So I didn't wave, I didn't slow down, I didn't check my phone when their messages came hours later. I let the road stretch ahead, endless and quiet. The skyline glowed in the distance, a reminder that the future doesn't wait for anyone still looking backward. And as the speed picked up, wind slicing through the air, I whispered the only thing that still mattered, the only words that felt right. Keep watching. Because if they ever wanted to see me again, they'd have to catch me in the rearview mirror, fading fast, leaving nothing behind but the sound of power and the truth they can't ignore anymore. That's the final slap of reality. The people who once ignored your beginning will eventually have no choice but to watch your success become their silence.